After serving as a pilot in the Second World War, Frank Henley built a long career in civil aviation as a bush pilot, airline pilot, and manager of aviation companies. He increased air service to northern Canada and for 30 years served Nordair Limited after establishing the company in 1957. Joseph Fernand Henley began his career in aviation as a pilot with the Royal Canadian Air Force during the Second World War. He soon became known as Frank, a name that has stayed with him. Born December 8, 1922 in the village of Marsuis, Quebec, on the north shore of the Gaspé Peninsula, he is a descendant of the family who were the village's first permanent settlers. Graduating from the Provincial Institute of Mines at Haileybury, Ontario, he received a certificate in mining and surveying. In 1941, at age 18, he enlisted in the RCAF and graduated in August 1942 as a pilot and received his officer's commission. He began his flying training on Tiger Moth biplanes at No. 1 Elementary Flying Training School at Malton, Ontario in 1942, and continued his training on Harvards at No. 13 Service Flying Training School at Saint-Hubert, Quebec. Training as a flying instructor at Central Flying School in Trenton, Ontario, he continued to fly Harvards as well as Fleet Finch and Fairchild Cornell aircraft. Frank then returned to Saint-Hubert, where for the next year he served as a flying instructor in 1942. Now a flight lieutenant, in 1943 posted to RCAF 161 Squadron based in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, he was flying the twin-engine Douglas Digby and the consolidated Canso on bomber reconnaissance flights. In 1944, Frank flew four-engined consolidated B-24 Liberator bombers at No. 5 Operational Training Unit in Abbotsford, British Columbia, and was then posted to No. 10 Bomber Reconnaissance Squadron in Gander, Newfoundland, flying sweep flights for the RCAF to locate submarines in the North Atlantic. In 1945, Flight Lieutenant Henley received his discharge. His military service had prepared him well for post-war flying, first earning his commercial pilot license in 1947. Frank and his wife, Blanche Montmagny, whom he married in 1944, are shown here during his bush flying days at Rouen, Quebec, with a Norseman he was flying for Gold Belt Air Service. From 1947 to 1951, he was bush flying with Gold Belt Air Service of Rouen, Fecteau Air Transport of Santerre, and Northern Wings of Seven Islands. In 1950, for Northern Wings Limited, Frank flew personnel for the Geodetic Survey of Canada to locations on the Labrador coast to establish control points for aerial mapping. And in 1951, Frank was hired as an airline pilot for Maritime Central Airways Limited, based in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. Shown here with his wife and a daughter, by 1954, Frank had become senior captain for Maritime Central Airways, responsible for northern base operations, particularly in connection with contracts for distant early warning line transportation, when radar sites were built across the Canadian Arctic during the Cold War. In 1955, Frank was named director of MCA's transatlantic charter operations, and is welcomed here by President Carl Burke after a non-stop flight of nearly 17 hours from Iceland in a Canso. In August 1956, he was appointed general manager of two air services, Boreal Airways Limited of Saint-Félicien, Quebec, and Mont-Laurier Aviation of Roberval, Quebec, both owned by MCA. In 1957, Frank amalgamated the two companies as Nordair Limited and was appointed Vice President Operations, Maintenance, and Engineering for the company. Using Douglas DC-3 and DC-4 aircraft, Nordair now provided scheduled flights from Montreal to serve Roberval, Fort Chimo, and Frobisher Bay. In 1961, with Lockheed Super Constellation aircraft, flights were extended to Resolute Bay, 1,200 miles north of Frobisher Bay. In the mid-1960s, Frank chose the Boeing 737 for scheduled services and transborder charter flights, making Nordair the first Canadian airline to use the 737. Nordair operated from 1957 to 1987, with flights to destinations in the Northwest Territories and providing international transatlantic passenger and freight charters, flying out of Montreal airports. In 1987, Nordair was purchased by Canadian Pacific Airlines, while Nordair's turboprop operations were absorbed by Intercanadienne. In 1983, Frank was appointed Quebec Air Vice President of Operations. Then, from 1985 until his retirement in 1990, he was president of his own company, Zenith Aviation. In 2000, Frank was awarded the Trans-Canada McKee Trophy by the Canadian Aeronautics and Space Institute for promoting aviation in Canada and for outstanding achievement in air operations. And in 2002, he was inducted into the Quebec Aviation Hall of Fame. In 2004, Frank was honored again when he was invested as a member of the Order of Canada. His varied and impressive career spans nearly a half-century in Canadian military and civil aviation. Today, Frank Henley and his wife Blanche make their home in Sainte-Geneviève, Quebec. Joseph Fernand Frank Henley was inducted as a member of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame at ceremonies held in Ottawa on May 30, 2013.